Sam Bankman-Fried was worth $26 billion. 1 week later, he was worth nothing. And his company owed billions to 1 million people. This is how the fastest collapse in financial history happened. Sam Bankman-Fried graduated from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology in 2014 with a degree in physics. He then worked for 2 years as a trader at Jane Street Capital, a quantitative trading firm in New York. In 2017, Bankman-Fried left Jane Street and founded Alameda Research, a cryptocurrency trading firm in Berkeley, California. Alameda specialized in arbitrage trading, profiting from small price differences in Bitcoin between exchanges in different countries. In 2019, Bankman-Fried founded a separate company called FTX, a cryptocurrency exchange where users could buy, sell, and trade digital assets. FTX was headquartered first in Hong Kong, then later relocated to Nassau, in the Bahamas, in 2021. The exchange grew rapidly by offering complex trading products, including leveraged derivatives that let users bet on cryptocurrency price movements. By 2021, FTX had become one of the largest cryptocurrency exchanges in the world, processing billions of dollars in daily trading volume. Bankman-Fried cultivated a specific public image: messy hair, t-shirts and shorts, and a self-described commitment to a philosophy called effective altruism. He pledged publicly to give away the vast majority of his fortune to charitable causes over his lifetime. FTX spent heavily on marketing and partnerships, including a $135 million naming rights deal for the Miami Heat's arena in 2021. The company also ran a Super Bowl advertisement in February 2022, featuring comedian Larry David during one of the most expensive advertising slots in television. Celebrities including Tom Brady, Gisele Bündchen, and Stephen Curry signed endorsement and equity deals with FTX during this period. By January 2022, FTX completed a funding round that valued the company at $32 billion, backed by major venture capital firms. Investors who backed FTX at that valuation included Sequoia Capital, SoftBank, and the Ontario Teachers' Pension Plan, among dozens of others. Sam Bankman-Fried's personal net worth, driven largely by his roughly 90% ownership stake in FTX, reached an estimated $26 billion at its peak. He frequently appeared in interviews and before Congress, positioning himself as a responsible voice, advocating for cryptocurrency regulation. Behind this public image, FTX maintained an unusually close relationship with Alameda Research, the trading firm Bankman-Fried had founded 2 years earlier. Alameda was technically a separate company, but Bankman-Fried controlled both FTX and Alameda directly, and the two shared significant overlapping staff. Caroline Ellison, Bankman-Fried's former romantic partner, served as chief executive officer of Alameda Research starting in 2021. Under normal exchange operations, customer funds deposited on FTX should have remained separate from any trading activity conducted by Alameda Research. According to later court testimony, FTX had built a software feature that allowed Alameda to maintain a negative balance, effectively an unlimited credit line. This meant Alameda could withdraw FTX customer deposits to fund its own trading positions, without those deposits ever appearing as a loan on FTX's books. Prosecutors later argued that by mid-2022, Alameda had used billions of dollars in FTX customer funds for its own trading and investments. FTX issued its own cryptocurrency token, called FTT, which Alameda held in enormous quantities on its own balance sheet. Alameda used large holdings of FTT as collateral to borrow money, creating a financial structure where much of its apparent value depended on a token FTX itself had created. This structure meant that if the price of FTT ever fell sharply, Alameda's entire financial position could become unstable very quickly. For most of 2022, this arrangement remained hidden from FTX's customers, outside investors, and the broader public. The first crack appeared on November 2, 2022, when the news outlet CoinDesk published a leaked copy of Alameda Research's balance sheet. That balance sheet revealed Alameda held $6 billion in assets, but a significant portion of that value was concentrated in FTT tokens. The report raised an immediate question. If Alameda's main asset was a token controlled by an affiliated company, was that value actually real? 4 days later, on November 6, 2022, Changpeng Zhao, the CEO of rival exchange Binance, announced on social media that Binance would sell its entire holding of FTT tokens. Binance had received its FTT holdings, valued at over $500 million, as part of an earlier exit from an investment in FTX in 2021. Zhao cited the CoinDesk report and stated Binance wanted to reduce risk exposure following recent revelations about the company's finances. That announcement triggered immediate panic among FTX customers, who began rapidly withdrawing their funds from the exchange. On November 6th and 7th, 2022, FTX customers attempted to withdraw an estimated $6 billion from the platform within a 72-hour window. FTX, which had used customer deposits to fund Alameda's trading activities, did not have enough liquid funds available to process those withdrawals. On November 8th, 2022, Bankman-Fried publicly stated on social media that FTX had enough assets to cover all customer withdrawals. That same day, internally, FTX halted customer withdrawals entirely, unable to meet the demand with available funds. Also on November 8th, Changpeng Zhao announced that Binance had signed a non-binding agreement to acquire FTX and resolve its liquidity crisis. For a brief period, the Binance deal appeared to offer a path for FTX customers to eventually recover their funds. On November 9th, 2022, just one day after announcing the agreement, Binance withdrew from the deal entirely. Binance cited the findings of its own due diligence review, stating that issues with FTX's handling of customer funds were beyond what the company was willing to address. With Binance gone, FTX had no remaining buyer and no clear way to cover the billions of dollars customers were owed. On November 11th, 2022, FTX, Alameda Research, and more than 130 affiliated companies filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection in Delaware. Sam Bankman-Fried resigned as chief executive officer the same day the bankruptcy filing was made public. John Ray III, an attorney who had previously overseen the liquidation of Enron after its 2001 collapse, was appointed as FTX's new CEO to manage the bankruptcy. Ray later stated in a court filing that, in his decades of legal experience, including Enron, he had never seen such a complete failure of corporate controls. The bankruptcy filing revealed FTX had no functioning accounting department capable of producing accurate financial statements at the time of its collapse. Court filings later described a corporate structure where Bankman-Fried and a small group of close associates made major financial decisions with minimal oversight. From the CoinDesk report on November 2nd to the bankruptcy filing on November 11th, exactly 9 days had passed. A company valued at $32 billion in January 2022 was, by November, unable to account for billions of dollars in missing customer funds. An estimated 1 million creditors, customers who had deposited funds on the platform, were listed in the bankruptcy filing. Many of those customers had treated FTX deposits similarly to a bank account, unaware their funds were being used to support Alameda's trading activities. Sam Bankman-Fried's personal net worth, estimated at $26 billion in early 2022, was reported by Bloomberg to have fallen to nearly zero within days of the collapse. On December 12, 2022, Bankman-Fried was arrested in the Bahamas at the request of United States federal prosecutors. He was charged with multiple counts, including wire fraud, securities fraud, conspiracy, and money laundering, related directly to the misuse of FTX customer funds. Bankman-Fried was extradited to the United States in late December 2022 and released on a $250 million bail bond, at the time the largest in U.S. history. Caroline Ellison, the former CEO of Alameda Research, pleaded guilty to fraud charges in December 2022 and agreed to cooperate with federal prosecutors. Gary Wang, a co-founder of FTX who had built much of its core trading software, also pleaded guilty to fraud charges around the same time. Both Ellison and Wang became key witnesses for the prosecution in the case against Bankman-Fried. Bankman-Fried's criminal trial began in New York on October 3, 2023, nearly 1 year after FTX's collapse. Caroline Ellison testified that Bankman-Fried had directed her to use FTX customer funds to cover Alameda's trading losses and other expenses. She testified that Alameda had used customer money to make billions of dollars in venture capital investments and political donations. Prosecutors presented evidence that Bankman-Fried had personally directed political donations exceeding $100 million during the 2022 election cycle, using funds traced back to FTX. On November 2, 2023, exactly 1 year after the CoinDesk report that began the collapse, a jury found Bankman-Fried guilty on all 7 criminal counts. The charges included wire fraud, conspiracy to commit wire fraud, securities fraud, and conspiracy to commit money laundering. On March 28, 2024, Bankman-Fried was sentenced to 25 years in federal prison. The presiding judge, Lewis Kaplan, stated during sentencing that Bankman-Fried's crimes were not the result of a momentary lapse, but of repeated, deliberate decisions. Bankman-Fried was also ordered to forfeit over $11 billion in assets connected to the fraud. He began serving his sentence at a low-security federal prison in California. The collapse of FTX became one of the largest financial frauds in United States history, frequently compared directly to Enron and Bernie Madoff's Ponzi scheme. John Ray's comment comparing FTX unfavorably to Enron's accounting failures became one of the most widely quoted lines from the entire collapse. Enron, despite its fraud, had maintained functioning financial records that investigators could eventually reconstruct and analyze. FTX, by contrast, had reportedly used software like QuickBooks, designed for small businesses, to track an exchange handling billions of dollars in customer assets. Court filings described a lack of basic corporate governance structures that even mid-sized traditional companies are typically required to maintain. There was no separate board exercising meaningful oversight over Bankman-Fried's decisions regarding how customer funds were used. The cryptocurrency industry as a whole faced significant fallout following FTX's collapse, as customer trust in centralized exchanges declined sharply. Several other cryptocurrency firms with financial ties to FTX or Alameda also faced bankruptcy or severe financial distress in the months that followed. BlockFi, a cryptocurrency lending platform that had received a loan from FTX earlier in 2022, filed for bankruptcy itself in November 2022. Genesis Global Capital, another crypto lending firm with exposure to Alameda Research, filed for bankruptcy in January 2023. The overall cryptocurrency market lost significant value in the weeks following FTX's collapse, as investor confidence across the industry declined sharply. Regulators in the United States, including the Securities and Exchange Commission, intensified scrutiny of cryptocurrency exchanges in the aftermath. Lawmakers in Congress held multiple hearings specifically examining FTX's collapse and the broader regulatory gaps that had allowed it to occur. Sam Bankman-Fried's parents, both Stanford Law School professors, also faced civil lawsuits related to their alleged involvement in FTX's finances. FTX's bankruptcy estate, under John Ray's management, spent the following 2 years attempting to recover assets and repay customers. By 2024, the bankruptcy estate announced it expected to recover enough assets to repay most customers the dollar value of their original deposits. That repayment was based on the value of assets at the time of the bankruptcy filing, not the often higher value cryptocurrency reached afterward. Many former FTX customers argued this approach shortchanged them, since the cryptocurrency they had originally deposited had since increased significantly in value. FTX's rapid rise had taken roughly 3 years, from its founding in 2019 to its $32 billion valuation in January 2022. Its collapse, from the first public warning sign to bankruptcy filing, took just 9 days. That speed distinguished FTX from earlier corporate collapses, which often unfolded over months or years as problems gradually became public. FTX's failure was accelerated specifically by the nature of cryptocurrency markets, where customer withdrawals can happen instantly, around the clock, without delay. A traditional bank facing a similar crisis might have days or weeks before depositors could fully withdraw their funds through normal banking channels. FTX customers could request withdrawals instantly, 24 hours a day, meaning the company's liquidity crisis became visible and severe within hours, not weeks. Changpeng Zhao's single social media post on November 6th, announcing Binance would sell its FTT holdings, set off the entire chain of events that followed. Some analysts have debated whether Zhao's announcement was simply prudent risk management or a calculated move against a direct competitor. Regardless of motive, the effect was immediate. A single public statement exposed a financial structure that had been unstable for months. Sam Bankman-Fried had cultivated a reputation as a responsible, safety-focused figure within the cryptocurrency industry throughout 2021 and early 2022. He had publicly criticized other crypto firms for taking excessive risks with customer funds, months before FTX's own structure was revealed to investors. The contrast between his public statements and the private use of customer deposits became central to the criminal case against him. The Miami Heat removed the FTX name from its arena in 2023, after the company failed to make required payments under the original naming rights agreement. Celebrity endorsers, including Tom Brady and Stephen Curry, faced separate civil lawsuits from investors alleging the endorsements had misled customers about FTX's safety. Many of those celebrity endorsement deals were structured as equity stakes, meaning the endorsers' compensation also became worthless when FTX collapsed. The venture capital firms that had valued FTX at $32 billion in January 2022, including Sequoia Capital, wrote down their entire investments to zero by November. Sequoia Capital publicly apologized to its own investors for failing to identify the risks inside FTX's financial structure before investing. FTX's collapse is now studied alongside Enron and Lehman Brothers as a case where a small number of insiders controlled enormous customer assets with minimal outside oversight. Unlike Enron's years-long accounting scheme, FTX's entire structure unraveled inside a single week, the fastest collapse of its scale on record. Sam Bankman-Fried's net worth went from an estimated $26 billion to functionally zero in roughly 7 days, one of the largest and fastest personal wealth losses ever recorded. 1 million customers were left waiting, in some cases for years, to learn whether they would ever fully recover money they believed was simply sitting in their accounts. The trial, the sentencing, and the bankruptcy proceedings stretched across more than 2 years after the initial collapse in November 2022. What took roughly 3 years to build, from a small Berkeley trading firm to a $32 billion global exchange, was gone within a single week. That is the story of FTX, the fastest collapse in modern financial history, and the trial that followed it. FTX took 3 years to build and 9 days to destroy. Subscribe for the next empire that thought it was too big to fail.